Hello! So today we're taking a look at the Cessna L19 Bird Dog, or L19 Bird Dog. It was created in the late 1940s for the US military. There was a contract given out to Cessna, or there was a competition to build a spotter plane, which Cessna won. So I think about 3,500 of them were built eventually and delivered to the military. And there are various different variants of it, so with floats and bush wheels and various army liveries, because they were used obviously during the Korean War, which followed on, directly. That expedited the order somewhat, apparently, and then Vietnam as well. So L19, it's been developed by Black Box Simulations in Flight Simulator. They are not well known for the fidelity of their 3D modelling, of their material modelling, so it's kind of good enough, but it isn't outstanding from the outside. But then Black Box are not famous for that. They tend to make aircraft that functionally work as they should, so inside all the instruments and stuff are going to work, and the plane's going to feel right. Yeah, the flight model is going to be very good. Okay, so it's worth pointing out where we are. If we have a look on the map, we are at Kern Valley again. But I've got now the free scenery upgrade from flightsim.to for Kern Valley that somebody's made, and it's very, very good. So it has absolutely transformed the airfield. So now we don't only get the wonderful scenery around the place, we also get a really nicely modelled airfield. Okay, so let's go and jump inside. So it's quite cramped inside, and if we look overhead we can see there are various pieces of kit dotted around the aeroplane. It's a very small aeroplane, and yeah, there's not much room to do anything inside it, so we can go and turn the fuel over to the main tank on the shut-off valve overhead. We'll leave the radio kit alone, and on this side we don't think we'll need the first aid kit. Hopefully we won't need the first aid kit. You see there's a transponder up there. There's also an ADF unit that's been retrofitted in. Okay, we can open the doors, and the windows. And you can open the windows independently of the doors as well if you wish to. So let's see how we get this thing started. So we're going to turn the battery on. We'll go and put the mixture forwards, so all of the linkages and everything, it's all modelled, it all works wonderfully. It just doesn't have that level of polish that some of the other aircraft in the simulator do. But I'm not too worried about that, as long as it works properly. Really don't care. So boost pump on, batteries on, beacon light on. So if you have a look outside, see if the beacon light is modelled at least. Where is the beacon light going to be found on this thing? There it is. Yeah, it's even rotating. As I said, Black Box are really good at making things work the way they should. They just don't look maybe as polished as you might wish. Okay, so go and turn the transponders to both, and we have a starter button here, so I'm going to crack the throttle open slightly. And okay, so it's not turning over. So, oops, got the door by accident there. Click spot isn't quite as accurate as you might want it to be here, so we're going to prime the engine a little and try again. Nearly. So let's give the throttle a bit of a move again and try again. Nearly. It's a bit tricky to get started, isn't it? So give it another bit more throttle to start maybe. Once more. Yay! There we go. So it's temperamental, let's put it that way. Obviously there's probably some procedures I could go through just to make sure I get everything warmed up and ready before I go and start the airplane. So let's turn the boost pump back off now. And we'll go and put the strobe lights, nav lights, landing lights on, taxi lights. Obviously there's nobody around, so we're not going to worry about blinding anybody apart from this AI character here. And let's go and take it for a fly, shall we? Right. Just checking around the aeroplane, make sure everything's clear. Come off the parking brake. Obviously it's a tail dragger, so it turns very nicely. It even feels good on the ground. I really like the way that black box model aeroplanes, so let's just sit up. And we'll have a nose around as we come past. It's a really, really nicely done airport. So we're going to taxi out towards the runway. Sit up so we can see where we're going. So it's fairly early in the morning here at Kern Valley. We're going to go for the long route down, being very careful with taxiing because there's, it's trying to lift the tail wheel. It's bouncing around a fair amount. I'm going to try and slow down a little bit, which is easier said than done on a downhill slope with a tail dragger. So I'm feathering the brakes all the way. Oh, that was close. Nearly did a ground loop there. So as I said, black box are very good at this, so you need to keep some thrust over the tailplane basically. So we're going to go and follow the route you might normally take to get the tail in the air very quickly. Obviously if we get the tail in the air with the thrust over it, then it can be controlled easily, and we're in the air. So that was a no flaps takeoff there, and this plane is famous for being able to take off. I think there were the specs that they were handed where it had to take off within so many thousand feet and clear a 600 foot, or sorry, clear a 60-foot obstruction. So I guess the idea is to come from rough strips, take off in a short distance, and clear obstructions like trees. Which it does easily, has to be said. So I think the L19 is actually like a cut and shut of several other models of Cessna. So it has the tail off of one model of Cessna, the wing off of another, and a new fuselage. So it's it was an interesting project, and they had to do it in very short time scales. So we're going to come back off the throttle a bit. So you'll see down here the RPM tends to stay quite high unless you reduce it to about 50% throttle. So the altitude over here, miles an hour instead of knots, which seems to be quite common of that era. Let's have a look at it from outside. So I've chosen US Army red and white livery, but there are various other liveries you get with it, including a bare metal one that looks a bit beaten up, and various green liveries and olive liveries from the excuse me, it's operational life. So let's go out over the lake and see what the climb rate's like. So if we open the engine up, so I've gone absolutely full throttle, which is just going above the green area on the RPM. So we're holding, just looking at the speed, coming down to 70 knots, dropping off to 1,000 feet a minute. So I imagine if you go a bit faster, you'll get a higher climb rate, to be honest. So if we drop down to 80 knots, yeah, you can see the climb rate obviously increases. So I'll have to look up in the pilot operating handbook to see where the sweet spot is for speed and climb rate. It might even be at kind of 90, 95 knots, you never know. The reason I'm climbing, of course, is to do some stall tests. Isn't it gorgeous around here? So if we sit back down in the cockpit. See, now I've noticed there is a graphical anomaly. It's obviously something in the texture or the 3D model. So I'm hoping that this has been fixed. Because if you move sideways in the aeroplane, you can see that out there. I'm not quite sure what it is. It doesn't exist on the right side of the aeroplane. It's only on the left or port side that there's this graphical anomaly out there. Anyway, let's try. We're just coming up through 6,000 feet, so this thing climbs like nobody's business. So let's pull it up into a steep climb, pull the throttle back to idle. The sounds are great, by the way. So in a straight line, it stalls in a straight line. So it doesn't drop a wing in level flight. What about if we were to... Now the propeller's going clockwise, so we'll do a coordinated turn. So it wouldn't even stall that time. It just mushed down. So let's put it into more of a climb. Let's get it back over the lake first. We'll give it a boot full of rudder as we stall. Okay, so back to idle. No, it's not going to spin. It's just dropping. So it's very, very stable. Let's try that again. We'll go left this time. It's dropping the right wing with left rudder, but it's not going to enter a spin, look. It's just kind of mushing around. Interesting. What if we were absolutely to throw it into a turn? Kind of desperately trying to make it spin. No, it won't. So it's almost unspinnable. So this aeroplane would have been used to come in low and to observe things happening on the ground. So we're going to come in low over these hills and try it out with low level flight on the way back into the airport. And then we'll have a go at an approach and see how we do with landing it. So we're just coming in the yellow, so being careful. Ready to open the throttle back up. It's very, very controllable. And because it behaves as you'd expect an aeroplane to behave, you can throw it around with confidence. Gonna scare this car driver to death. Go through this gap in the trees. Okay, let's go and have a look at this airfield then, before we come back in. So yeah, this is a free download of the airfield from flightsim.to, and I have to say it's very, very good. So let's put the flaps down to the 50% mark on the flaps. See how slow we can go. So in its observation role, this is absolutely how it might have been used, to kind of spot things happening on the ground or spot casualties to go fetch. Look at the size of the flaps. They're enormous. So we'll try and do a short field landing, shall we? So we'll just miss this hillside and then double back at short, very short range. So I'm just moving the flaps to their maximum. Oh my word. Let's keep an eye on that minimum speed. So throttle isn't doing much to keep this thing in the air. It's working more like an elevator, which, to be fair, is very much like the Islander. So just out of interest then. So on idle with full flaps, we're running out of elevator pretty quickly, and it just bounces down softly onto those wheels. If we go for thrust over those flaps, keep the attitude the same, and look at it climbing. So it's just basically doing a vertical takeoff of sorts. If we reduce flaps, we obviously get more forward speed. If we reduce the flaps or remove them entirely, then the speed increases. So we'll just get some speed up and loop back round for another approach, and do a more conventional approach this time. This is great fun to fly around. It's a shame there's that graphical anomaly out there at the end of the wing. It kind of is quite jarring that it's there. I'm not quite sure what might have caused it. Maybe it's something in the livery file. Let's see if we can see through the windscreen there. We can. Yeah, we're far too high, so we're going to circle back round. Didn't check back then, did I, for the approach? But it just shows, look, this aeroplane is so easy to throw around. So we'll at least go out to the lake here before we turn back. Or pond. Is it a pond or a lake if it's that small? So if we check back over our shoulder this time, can see where the airfield is in relation to us. We get very good visibility. Okay. Sit up in the cockpit so we can see what we're doing. Obviously you can sit off to one side if you want to, which I imagine the real pilots just tilt over in the seat to see past the stick there. So I'm going to go for the first stage of flaps. We don't need a lot of flaps to do this. So coming in about 75 miles an hour. It's a huge long runway here. This scenery for the airport is very good. I'm quite taken up with it, especially like all the posts and the wood and everything. It absolutely floats for miles, doesn't it? Could become a problem. No, it actually is quite controllable. It's just it will try and ground loop on you if you're not careful. So put the flaps back up. Whoa, we nearly lost it. I only have digital control of the brakes. Obviously if you've got rudder pedals with analog toe brakes, that will be an enormous help. Spin it round and taxi it back in. So hopefully the trip back up the hill towards the parking area won't be such an adventure this time. Coming downhill on the way out was more exciting than it should have been. Okay, so we're just coming up to the turn. So I'm going to bleed off some speed. There is some more parking over here. You can see there's a campground. Actually, should we go to the campground so you get to see it rather than going back to the... So there is a windsock here, obviously. There's hardly a breath of wind today. And then over this way there is a campground. You can see on the ground there's some tents. So I am feathering the brakes all the way down this slope so we don't have an enormous accident. Should park alongside the other one. There we go. So, if we go and pull the mixture back, it will starve the engine of fuel. We can turn all the lights off now. Obviously, while we were texting, we should really have gone and turned off the landing lights, but no harm done. Very good. It's a very good aeroplane, isn't it? Okay, yes, it doesn't have the visual fidelity that some of the others have, but it's great fun. Should we open the door? I think we can open both sides. Oh no, only one side opens, okay. So if we scoot out this way, there is no clipping at the edge of the cockpit, so you can get out and wander around. Very good. Right, I'm going to leave it there. So that was the Cessna L19 Bird Dog from Black Box Simulations. If you want a plane that actually flies really nicely and is great fun to go charging around valleys and places like this, then it's a great choice. Okay, I'll see you again soon.